I'm your host for Viva la Evolution, produced by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. And today, before I tell you that, you know how you got in through Recovery and Resilience Solutions webpage. There's a little thing that says read more, and if you press that, you get the written blog for this podcast. Trust me, it's much more coherent than me talking. So I really want to encourage you to look at that, especially today, because today there's 3 web links in there that I think you'll find very interesting. I'll tell you about them maybe as we go along. But if I don't tell you, just go there and look anyway, because I just found them very helpful and informative. So today we're going to be talking with Andrea and Natalie from Camhpro. And if you don't know, Camhpro stands for California Association of Mental Health Peer-Run Organizations. That's why we say Camhpro, because it's easier. Okay. And they're going to start by telling us their recovery stories. And I just think everyone that we talk to should tell us their story, because that's we need to know what happened and how it happened so we can keep doing it. Okay, so they're going to tell us their stories. Then they're going to tell us about Camhpro and some of the amazing things they're doing these days. And I'll tell you, Sally Zinman, the founder of Camhpro, would be proud of these 2 ladies and of the whole folks there at Camhpro. They're doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and they'll tell you more about that. But where I want to start is with something that's been really upsetting me lately, and it's the increase in forced treatment. And if you've watched the news or read the paper, you know, it's happening all across the nation, and our governor here in California is very proud of his things he's doing to involuntarily detain more people and do forced treatment. The deal is, that's not the way to bring about recovery. There are very few people, very, very few people who need to be forced into treatment. And I will be the first to say there are some people that need that, but there aren't very many of them. Here's what's happening with 988. I'm going to read this so I get it right. Since 988, let's see, make sure I get the right place. Oh, darn it. Okay. So since 988 came into being, I might not have that quite right, 44,000 people have been subjected to involuntary interventions over the previous year. This was last year. Now this year, the first 10 months of this year, 81,000, so it's almost doubled, 81,000 Americans who have reached out to 988 for confidential conversations have ended up being coercively taken to a psychiatric hospital. And here's what they say about it. Many users describe the experience of betrayal, public exposure, public police interactions, loss of freedom, and forced psychiatric treatment as dangerous, harmful, and traumatizing. Well, yeah. Someone shows up at your house after you've had a confidential call, maybe in a sheriff's department, maybe a first, and they say, you got to come with us. That's traumatizing. So, if you read this, it'll be much better than me telling you. The point is, if we want people to recover, we've got to get to them before they get to that point. And the way to get to them is peer support, because it's non-threatening, it's non-judgmental, it's, hey, I've been there, I can help you. It's that kind of approach. So if we have peer support on the front end, before they make that call, or even if they make the call peer support, don't call the hospital. And if they come out of the hospital, then peers are there. And peer-run programs are a vital part of the ecosystem of the whole treatment deal. Vital, fragile and vital. I am so afraid that we're going to take money away from peer-operated programs and buy more hospital beds. I have been in this business for almost 60 years. 60 years. I've seen a lot of ideas come and go. And I got to tell you, this is one of the worst ideas. It's not taking all the stuff we learned about recovery and putting it to work. It's going right to the most restrictive, expensive level of care and buying a lot more of it, possibly at the expense of whatever else is going on with people. So, okay, I'm done. That's my rant. I just couldn't help it. I'm just getting so upset about all this. And I'm so happy to have this little part of peer support and peer-operated programs to talk to you about, because you'll get a feel. Well, let me just say this. Last week we heard from Shannon. This week we're going to hear from Natalie and Andrea. And if you put those stories together and all the other stories you've heard, here's how they go. Struggle. Big struggle. I'm not going to get into diagnosis and all that. Just big struggle. Big struggle. Then someone comes along who sees their potential and believes in them and gives them some hope. This happens a lot with peers. They're really good at this. And then gives them the opportunity to go to work. Those are the three steps. It's really simple. It really works. So remember Shannon's story. Listen to what Natalie and Andrea have to say about their recovery story. And then you'll just get the power of peer-operated programs and peer support. Then at the end, I'm going to tell you some peer support stuff that's happening at Crestwood. It's very exciting. And Crestwood is kind of a hospital, but they believe in peer support. They're driven by the slogan of not 1 minute more. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that at the end. Right now, let's listen to Andrea and Natalie. You're going to love them. I just came away from talking to them with new hope in my heart. Okay, here we go. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to chat with Andrea and Natalie from Camhpro today. They do such amazing work, and I'm just grateful that you folks were available and willing to share with us some of the remarkable things that are happening at Camhpro. So would you like to introduce yourselves and we'll go from there?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Andrea Wagner, and I'm the executive director here at Camhpro. I've been in this position about 2 years now, going on 2 years. Yeah, pass it to me.
So my name is Natalie Conrad, and I am the program manager for a program that Camhpro has developed called Building Peer Leadership in California.
Okay, Natalie, you're just reminding me that I have sat in on a couple of those, and they're very good.
Thank you.
And the whole idea there is to build strong peer services, right?
Well, yes, to also build leadership skills in our peers, because now that we have peer certification, it's really important to be able to be ready to step into these new roles that will be created as a result of getting more and more certified peers across the state of California.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that, and I know our audience does too. But before we go too much further, I'd love for you two to share just a little bit of your recovery stories. Because people forget that we've recovered from a lot of stuff, and I want to honor that. So maybe, Andrea, would you mind going first?
Sure, sure. Thank you for that question, because I often get so involved with the business of doing the work that I forget to share that I am also a person with lived experience that has a story. And I don't often talk about it. But it is why we're here, why I am here. So just really, the short story is, I came into peer support, it's going on almost 10 years ago now. The good part of my journey started about 10 years ago after some really traumatic things. My 14-year-old son passed away the end of 2013 from brain cancer.
Oh, no.
And it was at a point in my life where I had gotten off of disability. I was starting to work again. I was doing, art therapy and regular therapy, and I was doing a writing group, and I was really just like moving along, not knowing that those were recovery tools. I was just starting that process of getting better. And then my son got sick and passed away, and everything kind of crumbled. And I ended up for my third time in a hospital for depression and suicidal, contemplation and all of that. And when I came out, I started going to our local wellness center and going to every group that I thought I had to go to. And I was trying to get back on disability. And somebody said, you should really apply to be a peer advocate. And I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't think I can work, and so I applied for 2 jobs and got them both. And so it started this long process of working, and, as both a part of our local wellness center and as an outreach and advocate person working on the warm line, and also working in crisis services as a peer. But before that, and that wasn't until my 30s, my mid 30s, and before that, there was a lifetime of stuff that happened since I was, 8 or 9 years old, a lot of family trauma, abuses and things like that. And I never really knew, I just always thought there was this underlying in me that would come out every once in a while. I knew it would just keep coming back. And that's how I kind of described it to myself. And, now I can talk about it in clinical terms, it's like, oh, it was a bipolar pattern, and I was up and down for, patterns of hypomania, and I, had panic attacks. But those are all just labels for what I was experiencing. But I didn't know there were other people that were going through it too. And that was the big turning point for me. And just realizing that I had a choice in how I responded to the ups and downs of my mood and the things that I was responding to in my environment. There were tools of how to work through it, and that just changed my whole world. And I became an advocate from my former profession was a newspaper reporter, and I always just wanted to write and travel. But once I found this, it became my passion. It's like, this is what I need to do, and so that's what led me to here. But really, being well through peer support is what changed everything, changed my whole trajectory.
Isn't it powerful? It's just like suddenly you go to the other side of the street. Your identity is not as a sick person anymore, but as a well person helping other people. And it gets reinforced regularly doing the work. And it's I just think it's the most magical and effective healing tool that we've ever come across in the whole mental health system. So
I mean, for me, the glue that holds it all together is knowing that I have a choice to be well.
yes.
And that I actually have a choice to say how I'm going to react to the feelings that I have and what I'm going to do in response. And there are ways there's a ways like the drumming, like the writing, that I can use to get through it. I don't have to choose just my old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful to learn, and it held everything together.
That's great.
Yeah.
I know when I first started my recovery process, I knew I kept hearing about recovery, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't have it because I was still scared of my symptoms and so forth. And what helped me was realizing that I could do something, that it wasn't, I didn't need another doctor to tell me what to do or another counselor. I needed that what could I do? And I'm hearing that in your conversation too, that it's just knowing that we have the ability and the power to participate in our healing in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I know that for me, thinking I had no control initially, and I didn't understand, I just thought there was this thing wrong with me that I just, couldn't talk about, that, like I just had to keep going and trying to get through things, and that I would feel like giving up sometimes because it was like, I don't know what to do with this feeling. I don't know how to, and when I learned that I could do things with it, that I could, it just changed everything. It's like, it's completely different lens that I looked at my
Yes.
experience, and I've learned to love myself through that. It's really powerful.
That's amazing. That's a big one. I still struggle with that one.
It's a
Natalie,
day by day thing.
yeah, that's true. It is one day at a time. Natalie, let's hear your recovery story.
Sure. I am a suicide survivor from my teenage years, and for fast forward, I was properly diagnosed in the early 90s, and went through all of the things people go through with not knowing how to accept it and whether or not I wanted to take medication, and all of that. But what I did all of these years is wear a mask because I wanted to be normal. And then I was following Project Semicolon, which was an organization, a nonprofit online, all about suicide and depression awareness, which is my diagnosis. And one day I got their tattoo of a semicolon on my wrist. And the reason for the semicolon is an author can choose to end their sentence, but instead chooses to carry on. And that's how you use a semicolon in a sentence. So in following them online one
Can you show us your tattoo?
Sure.
Ah, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a great conversation starter to talk about mental health when people meet you. But fast forward, Project Semicolon had put a challenge out in one of their anniversaries for everyone to write their story. And you didn't have to send it in or tell anybody, but write your story. And personally, I'm the opposite of Andrea. I do not like to write, but something just told me to write my story. And I started writing and couldn't stop until I was finished. It was just coming faster than I could write. And it felt so good to have actually written it all out, to taken it out of my mind onto paper. And I held on to it for a while. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but that was the pivot point for me. That is when I decided, you know what? I'm tired of wearing the mask. I now see how I wear the mask to act normal, how acting normal does not do anything for my mental health. And, it's just like living a lie. And so it was at that point, it was 2017, that I decided to come out, if you will, and talk about my diagnosis. And I had a perfect opportunity as I was in leadership of a philanthropic organization. And so we decided to put on a community event called Erase the Stigma Now, because for me, if I talk about what was the one thing that I could change or wish that I could change based on my experience, it was stigma. That is the first reason why I hid behind the mask.
Yeah.
So we put together a community event and invited people with lived experience to speak on a panel. And we had a couple hundred people there. Andrea, that's how I met Andrea. Somebody told me about her, and I told her, I asked her to come and speak, and she did. And that put me on the mission. And then, like Andrea said, the passion of it all started to come out. I started to learn about peer support and learn, like Andrea said, there's some things I was already doing, but I was lacking community. And peer community is so vital, so vital. So since 2017, I've immersed myself into now what I know is the peer movement and peer support, and is definitely a passion of mine moving forward. So I'm very thankful.
I can so relate to your story too. I'm pretty old. I'm 79. So most of my period of really dealing with hard symptoms was before there were any such thing as peers. And in about 2000, my husband and I got a little grant to train peers to work alongside of us. And we had no idea what we were doing, but we created a training program with some of our team and trained peers, and they started changing our lives significantly. And our programs, we just started doing what they told us to do because they knew what worked. And then I just so get what you're saying about community, because I felt like I then had a community. And then I could stop wearing a mask because I'll tell you, I tried to be normal, but I don't think anybody ever believed it. I was not good at it. They just thought I was pretty strange, I think, most of the time. But anyway, thank you both for sharing your stories. Thank you. That's so powerful. Let's talk a little bit about Camhpro now. You know, I remember the being this old, I can think way back to when peer advocacy programs at a state level came and went, and usually they would crash in on themselves. It wasn't like somebody did something bad to them. They just caved in on themselves and went away. And the last time that happened, Sally Zinman rose from the ashes and created Camhpro. And I was so impressed with her pulling all that together one more time, because she started it way back and then it fell apart a few times, and then she finally came back and resurrected it. And by then she knew how to build it strong, and she did such a beautiful job. And I'm just so glad it's in good hands with you folks moving forward. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what your hopes and dreams are. Tell us anything you want to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to talk about Sally in anything we do because she was the founding director. I mean, she had help to get it started, but she was really the idea leader, the values and mission leader of the organization. And so, you know, she's the reason I'm with Camhpro. I actually had met her back when I was doing the work as a brand new advocate, when I had signed up for something. I didn't know what I was signing up for. And I sat down next to this lady at this training, and I started talking to her and her daughter and her grandson. And then she got up and walked up, and it was Sally, and she told her story. And I went, what? Yeah. Like, I had no idea who I was sitting next to, and she was just a nice person. And then I just realized what she had been a part of, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of that, and that she was the reason I was in that seat. You know, she was the reason I was, you know, for our area, like, she was a big reason why we had peers in the county, and what I was doing with the wellness center. And so, so for me, that's the beginning of my Camhpro story, because I actually trained as a peer through a Camhpro Peer training early on before they had certification. So I kind of followed Camhpro through the years. So Camhpro has been established since 2012 as a 501c3, done various trainings and advocacy work. And I came on in 2020, the middle of the pandemic, when Camhpro was awarded the LEAD grant. Well, we call it the LEAD program, Lived Experience Advocacy and Diversity Program. And that was the Education, Outreach, and Advocacy grant for the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission. They had, it was a 3-year grant, and I came on, and Sally invited me to be the manager. I cannot believe it. I was so excited. I remember getting the call, like, oh my gosh. But she, you know, it was very small at that point, and Camhpro has primarily been grant led. So the goals and missions of Camhpro is really to be an association of peer-run organizations, but there's also individuals that are part of that. So to encourage both the individual, kind of like Natalie was talking about with the leadership program, to encourage the individual to grow as well as the organizations. So the idea behind creating Camhpro, what I've been shared, that has been shared and carried forward with me, is that there was this idea that the power and authority and advocacy in the peer community was at these sort of hubs. these wellness centers, these places in the community where people would go every day. Maybe they're not an advocate, but they show up and they say what they want and need locally. And that's really where the power and the voice was kind of centered in the areas. And so they decided to make this association so that we could, you know, continue to empower those voices by connecting those kind of hubs together and supporting their growth. And so what we do, all of our programs are related to that in some way, either growing the peer workforce or growing, you know, leadership, growing, you know, policies that support those organizations and funding. And so, yeah, right now we have 5 programs, 5 different grants that we're working on. The lead grant is actually just coming to its final month. And then we have one that works on psychiatric advanced directives on a web-based platform for that. We have one that works on, you know, leadership and growing leadership and capacity building for peer-run organizations. And then we also we've ventured out into a local sort of direct service through our Cal Hope program, and we have 7 specialists that work locally in Butte County, but also statewide through online, doing groups and one-on-one counseling, not counseling, but, you know, support. And then I'm missing one. Oh, and then our peer empowerment project, which peer empowerment partnership, which was developed with Department of Healthcare Services to work on the implementation of peer certification with the peer lens. So really making sure that the peer voice is involved in the rollout of that. And there's been some successes and challenges, but really we are trying to stay in the mix throughout all these programs to make sure that people have an outlet and a way to get their voices heard on both the local and the state level.
And, you know, I just wanted to add to that. It's when we make a way for people's voices to be heard, it's not just advocacy, it's actually a healing process in and of itself. It could be called a treatment. You know, that's probably more effective than a lot of the medications we've all had to take. Because when a person can start to speak and make choices from their core being, they start to know who they are. And that's what gets lost with mental illness, is we wander around in this maze of symptoms and treatments, and we lose ourselves. But to have a voice is so important. So I love that Camhpro is a lot about voice. And it's not just advocacy, it's really a healing process. Yeah. Natalie, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite programs and what you're up to.
Well, I love that Camhpro was at the table with the Department of Healthcare Services in developing what it was going to look like to be a certified peer support specialist. They really communicated with us, and they took a lot of what, you know, we recommended, not everything, but a lot, and it was a great collaboration, a great sense of collaboration. Also, since then, other organizations have come together with Camhpro in support or opposition of bills, and I just love, you know, seeing the strength behind that. Also love that Camhpro, for the last 3 years through the LEAD program, put on a statewide conference, and wow, to see the peers interacting together, to hear the stories, to hear the messages, to see the successes and even the struggles. It just is inspiring and uplifting.
You know, when I go to a conference that's not about peers, I'm bored anymore because I don't get that heart connection that comes through. I just went to NIAPSR's conference when Natalie and I were there together. And just being with peers, I mean, there's no BS, you know, it's just, here I am, here's my story, how can I help you? And then I go to a regular conference and I'm thinking, well, what are we doing here? Are we going to talk about head stuff? Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just had to burst in with a little joy around that.
Yeah. Because we're about not just the head stuff, but the heart stuff, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I came on through the LEAD program with Andrea, and then moved on to the Building Peer Leadership program when it was developed. And so there is so much that we're doing both for agencies and for individual peers. With agencies, we are focused on their capacity building, their diversity in leadership and peer roles within their programs. And for individuals, we're encouraging peers to start businesses.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, yes. And so we're teaching the steps in order to be able to do that. We also are doing one-on-one mentoring. We are continuing to have, testing prep sessions for the certified peer exam. And we are in constant communication with CalMesa, which is the organization that is, dispensing everything peer support right now. And so we do webinars, we do regional forums, and our first regional forum is coming up in Reading, November 10th. So it's going to be dynamic. And what we're hoping to do with the regional forums is really get out there face to face with folks that I like to say are untapped. The peers out there who may live in the rural areas, or who may be differently abled, or who may have a different gender identity, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So trying to reach those, because if you look, as peers are getting certified, those populations are still way in the minority of passing the exam and having access to resources. So
And
I'm
it's
really
so important
enjoying to
have
do that.
those folks involved, because the more people can serve their own people, it just creates a whole new connection. So thanks for bringing that up. That's really important.
It is.
Really important. Well, I just love everything you guys are doing. Forgot what it is. I went to Peer Apocalypse last year, and they had 800 people there. And I was just blown away. They had a large contingency from Hawaii. And I know you guys are about California, but how do you interact with other states?
Well, I mean, we've, Sally, as our director, had good relationships with a lot of national leaders, Dan Fisher, Harvey Rosenthal. She had a long history because she kind of came up in the movement with them, and so I've tried to maintain it and keep those relationships in a new way, because I'm not Sally, I'm a different person. But I also see there is a really, I went to Washington, D.C. with the National Coalition on Mental Health Rehabilitation Services. And we went to the Hill Day for this last summer. And I was really struck by the amount of new executive directors taking over these programs that were founded, in the 90s, and earlier, Honor Own of Maryland has a new young executive director. There's Atlanta, Kentucky, all these places. And I was struck by how many of us, because I'm over here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm working in Sally Zinman's place. There's no way anyone would know what that's like. I mean, how do you even follow in the footsteps of a giant, right? But I found that there are a lot of new leadership in our statewide coalitions, in our statewide peer organizations, and in our local organizations. And so I kind of came back a little bit renewed about that, of hey, we have connections. I mean, Shireen Crocco in North Carolina. I mean, there's some people out there doing the work that we're doing, and just how can we continue to grow that? And so going to the NAPRS conference, there really is a growing, there's an existing community that's been there a long time, but there's a new birth in it happening right now. And that's inspiring to me to think, and moving in new directions. So nationally, we're going to continue with the coalition. We're also talking about how do we make our state conference something like Peer Apocalypse? How do we make it a standalone conference that isn't tied to a grant or anything like that? So how do we do that? And how do we invite people from all over to come, not just Californians? Our last conference was pretty amazing. We had about 600, if you count the 200 people online. We had 425 in person, or somewhere around there. And that was our biggest one that Camhpro's ever done for Camhpro. And when we asked during the conference, we said, how many of you, this is your first time at a state conference with the peers? And like at least half the room raised their hands. And so we're like, we've got a lot of work to do to really make people understand what they're part of. We've got them to the table, we've got them in the door, but like, how do we grow that? And so, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. I think there's an opportunity here for all of us.
Yes, I think so too.
And
Well,
in
I
our
don't think-
networking,
Go ahead.
in our networking with the other states and coalitions, we've invited them to be speakers, and we've gone and presented for them, because
good.
peer support is peer support, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what state you live in. So
a good
we are
idea.
sharing knowledge a lot more, and that's really good, because each state shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Right.
We should be able to collaborate and
Yes,
work
learn
together.
from each other.
Learn from each other, yes.
Well, I love what you guys are doing. I'm so glad Camhpro is alive and well and kicking. Natalie, just in wrapping up here, you were telling me a little bit about, what is it, 5 and 5?
Oh yes, Camhpro is doing something fantastic. It's
Okay.
called 5 and 5 Camhpro Live. And Camhpro has a van that they're driving up and down the state of California, visiting different wellness centers. And I'll let Andrea kind of tell you how we've positioned that. If you go to our website, camhpro.org, the schedule's right on the front page. So you can join us in the next location where we will be.
Oh, what a great idea. So people know where you are. You're like a traveling band.
It does feel a little bit like with the van, come find our van, and we got little roadies and but no, the idea is that, really to draw attention to what's good and what's working, because how do you change the energy and change the dialogue? We want to focus on something good and something positive, something we are able to do, we're capable of, and what was already happening and what we already know, like these amazing stories of recovery. We want to focus on that. So we started yesterday. We went out to Susanville. We interviewed these folks that run Judy's House out there. They're talking about all the things that they do to help people and divert them from having to be hospitalized and other things, and just provide that community support and the warm line that they do. But we want to highlight that all over California. So we are going to the people, meeting people where they are at, and driving there in this colorful van to highlight their programs. And we're also transitioning to more online media like this. That's been hard for people like me that are kind of in the middle. It's like, kind of pulling myself, stretching myself a little bit. I'm not a big social media person, but that's where it's at, and we're trying to grow that and learn how to do that better and how to reach people. So it's a live, in the moment, kind of fresh look at what we're doing.
That's wonderful. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you ladies, and so informative and so inspiring. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I just send my best with you. Thank you. Well, so there, I told you. Aren't they great? And aren't you excited about what they're doing? Oh, I am too. It just makes my heart sing. Yeah. Any of you who can support them in any way, please do. Please do. I'm going to do that too. And then a little bit about this Crestwood thing. A few years ago, Crestwood, after watching us do peer support all over the place, said, we think we can do that. Now, this is a big challenge, because remember, the folks in Crestwood are not walking around in the community with a work history usually. Not that most peers have that, but they're not, these are folks who have been, I'm going to just say it. I say this a lot. These are folks that the system has failed. We tend to think they failed. No, the system failed them because it was unable to do what they needed in the community to keep them well and safe and productive. So they end up in locked facilities. And they're on conservatorship. So they've lost every right and they're locked. So Crestwood's response to that is, they've done a lot. I mean, their restraint rate is like nothing in all their facilities. There's zillions of facilities, still low. So the latest initiative they've come up across is peer support. So I don't want to tell you too much because Jim and Chris are going to tell you about it next week. I'll just tell you a little bit. There's a 5-site pilot. We're now beginning the 3rd site. We're going in and training those people who've been deemed to be needed to be locked and on conservatorship, training them to be peer support specialists. Not all of them, of course, but those who want to do it. And then they get a paid internship, and then they get hired. Wow. Who would have thought? Now, there's actually research that says this shouldn't work, but it does. It's working. And so come back next week, and you're going to hear about this really fun, amazing stuff. I might even get a couple graduates to just chime in. We'll see if I can do that. So, okay, I'm done now. Sorry, it's a little longer than usual. And I'll see you next week. Have a great week. I'm so glad you could join us. I'm so glad that I get to just keep talking about what I believe in, and that you're listening, and that I hope you believe in it too. Because this is how things change. We'll pick up the water bottle. We'll dance when no one else is dancing. Right? Okay. All right. I know. Too much. All right. Bye for now. See you next week.